Welcome to the Afterspin, opinions from thought leaders in our state. I want to ask Chris Fitzsimon and John Hood. North Carolina's economy has been very strong this year, but Dr. Mike Walden recently released the NC State University Index of Leading Economic Indicators. It showed that in September, the index took the steepest plunge since it was first created in 2007. Unemployment claims increased, housing starts dropped, average weekly hours and average weekly wages all dropped. Now, Walden attributed this drop to Hurricane Florence, but that storm didn't hit until the middle of the month. Do you agree with Walden about why the index dropped, and perhaps do you see a softening of the economy in North Carolina in 2019? John?
Well, I think that it is probably a hurricane event, but we don't know, and that's why we have indices that are updated every month, so we can look at October and November, December, and see if there's something more worrisome here. I think right now I would attribute it, as Mike did, primarily to storm damage.
Chris, what's your take on this?
I do too. I think it was such a massive storm, the economic damage, the jobs lost. I mean, people have no place to work and have no place to live in a lot of cases. So I think we have to wait for the next couple months. But I do think history tells us that at some point the recovery, this long recovery, is going to end. And in North Carolina, we sort of have become accustomed to that being roughly every 10 years, where we're coming up on that. So I think the trend line in the next 3 to 5 years is probably going to, just by normal economic historic cycles, is going to start trending down. And actually, we talked about politics, mentioned 2020 in this week's show. I actually think that is one of the biggest issues in 2020, is if people perceive the economy is starting to go down.
But here, our legislature has, I think, wisely stockpiled money in the rainy day funds and reserves and so forth for an economic downturn. They're going to be spending an awful lot of that in hurricane relief, are they not?
They are, and they're going to have to be very careful now that we have a Republican majority, but not super majority necessarily, Republican legislature and a Democratic governor in 2019. I think there's going to be a lot of conflict about how quickly the spending growth increases. I think that it would be wise for both parties to recognize that the downside risk of going into a recession after getting slammed by a hurricane and spending out your rainy day fund is sizable, and we don't need to downplay that. We need to be cautious in 2019.
This is going to make budget negotiations for 2019 even more interesting and important, is it not?
Oh, absolutely. And that's always the biggest issue of every legislative session, no matter what they do. And this will be a fascinating one. Governor Cooper will present a budget. The General Assembly will pass a different one. Governor Cooper will likely veto it unless they work something out before, and then the real negotiation starts. And we'll see what happens. I don't disagree that they need to be cautious. I think there'll be people calling for more tax relief, for example. I think there'll be all sorts of things on the table. We talk on this show almost every other week about the unfunded liabilities in the retirement system, the healthcare system. We really haven't addressed those in a meaningful, powerful way. So there's a lot of needs out there. I still think there are a lot of needs that haven't been addressed in the human services area in North Carolina. And education, we didn't talk too much about on last week's show. That was one, along with healthcare, was a major issue in the elections. People, whether you agree with them or not, I do, but that think more needs to be spent in our schools. A very complicated time to be passing a budget.
Well, and 2019 is the so-called long session of the legislature, and it may well live up to that reputation. We may be in session for a while next year. Well, thank you for watching the Afterspin. We'll have more video all during the week on ncspin.com.